What's up, everybody? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel, and then follow me on social media on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter so you guys don't miss any of our content over the course of this season. All right, let's talk some basketball. Why is Jayson Tatum not considered a top 5 player despite being selected first team All-NBA 3 years in a row? Had a bunch of Celtics fans bring this up to me. First of all, first team All-NBA is an award. It's something that is voted on, and it typically has a lot more to do with team success than anything else. And so as a result, we commonly will see situations where first team All-NBA does not represent the top 5 players in the NBA. Just a couple quick examples. 2022, Devin Booker made first team All-NBA. I didn't think he was a top 5 player in the league. Last year, Nikola Jokic didn't make first-team All-NBA. He was very clearly the first team in the best player in the NBA. That was back in 2023, not 2024. So the first-team All-NBA is not just a clear ranking of the top 5 players in the league. Secondly, anybody who's followed me on the show knows I've been consistent ever since 2022. Literally before the finals even started with Golden State, when I picked the Warriors to win that series, I still said, I think Boston has the most talented roster in the league. I thought they had the most talented roster in the league in 2023, and then I thought they had by far the most talented roster in the league in 2024. Boston has the most talent. They just do. They've had the most talent 3 years in a row now. And what ends up happening is when you have a lot of talent, you win a lot of games. When you win a lot of games, especially in a weak Eastern Conference, you're going to have a lot of really favorable metrics, right? Because those metrics are fed by the results that are taking place on the floor. And a good percentage of the NBA voting pool, they legitimately make decisions based on numerical evidence over what they're seeing on their TV screens, which is something I personally disagree with, but I've literally had voters tell me that. I've had voters tell me that they believe that numbers are less fallible and I'm not talking about raw counting stats. I have talked to voters who believe that catch-all metrics are more reliable than what we see on our TV screens, which is something I personally very much disagree with. I think catch-all metrics are incredibly flawed. And so the point is, Jayson Tatum, while I do believe he's a top 10 player, has benefited from being on the most talented rosters in the league, which has led to incredible team results, which has led to incredible individual metrics, which has led to him getting a lot of voting support in the All-NBA voting. In my opinion, he is not one of the top 5 players in the NBA. He's not a good enough offensive engine in the half court to be that. I do think Tatum is underrated by a lot of his haters. And by the way, this is something that I understand where Celtics fans are coming from. I am one of those guys that I personally very much value the offensive engine archetype. I think it's the most valuable skill a player can bring to the team. That's why a guy like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, for example, is better, in my opinion, than a Jayson Tatum. If I need a guy to lead my team for 4 playoff rounds while surrounded with a bunch of talent to just generate quality shots, give me Shai over Tatum every single time, right? That's just my personal view of the game. Too often, and I know this is especially from Laker fans, and God knows that we've got a lot of Laker fans that we deal with on the show because I am a Laker fan myself, and we cover the Lakers very closely, and we got a lot of Lakers fans that follow me on Twitter, and a lot of Lakers fans that are in the comments, and so I understand that there can be a lot of Tatum negativity, but I just want to have an honest conversation about it. I think he's an underrated defensive player. I think his size and strength, even though it's led to some drawbacks with his jump shot, has allowed him to become one of the most versatile front court defenders in the league. His ability to guard opposing centers was a huge part of what made Boston's defensive schemes work during their 2-month playoff run. I'm a huge believer in Jayson Tatum. I think his offensive kind of approach worked really well with this Celtics group that had so much talent. Big Jayson Tatum fan, but he is just not the offensive force that the top players in the league are. That to me puts him below that top tier of superstars, and I do not think he's a top 5 player. That said, he's going to continue to make first team All-NBA because he's on the most talented roster in the league. He'll make first team All-NBA again next year, and I'm probably not going to think he's a top 5 player. And so again, that's just my take. I know you Celtics fans disagree. Doesn't mean you're wrong. Doesn't mean I'm wrong. These are just our opinions. That's why we're hashing them out. This was a direct message I got from Kevin. Hey, Jason, longtime fan and listener. Please more Devin Booker love, man. He's been so good defensively considering his skill set. He has been at the top of Team USA in plus minus since the beginning of camp. I want some Jason Timpf love from a man, D Book. So the Devin Booker thing has been really fascinating to me. I actually was talking with the Spears and Ali, they're a local radio station here in Tucson. Actually, I was on there this morning, and we were talking. They specifically asked me, like, with the play of Devin Booker and Kevin Durant and the play of Anthony Davis and LeBron James, should Lakers fans and Suns fans be excited? And my answer was they should be annoyed. And the reason why they should be annoyed is the reason why the Suns and Lakers struggle is because outside of their stars, they don't have starting caliber NBA players that play both ends of the floor. Like, Austin Reeves is the third best Laker. He's a very good offensive player, and he tries on defense. But because of his limitations, he's an average to slightly above average defensive player. D'Angelo Russell, very good offensive player, very bad defensive player. Rui Hachimura, very good offensive player, very bad defensive player. Jared Vanderbilt, very good defensive player, very bad offensive player. Gabe Vincent, decent offensive player, or a decent defensive player, pretty bad offensive player. As you can see, they got these one-way guys. And so the Lakers are full of holes, and they've had a bunch of issues, which is why I've been preaching they need upgrades at the 2 and 3 now for 2 years, right? Look at the Suns. Same sort of thing. Beyond Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal, it's a bunch of guys who play one end of the floor. Yusuf Nurkic is a really useful 5-out fulcrum who sets good screens, sets good dribble handoffs, can finish under the basket, can get offensive rebounds, can occasionally knock down a three. And while I was impressed by his effort defensively last year, he's limited there. You know, Eric Gordon at this phase in his career, not exactly a dominant two-way player, right? Josh Okogie, really good defensive player, limited offensively. We can go on, but the reality is the Suns and the Lakers are struggling because from the front office down, and for the Suns, it has more to do with their constraints after making the deals that they made. For the Lakers, it has more to do with organizational incompetence, but those teams are struggling because, as we saw, having the Derrick Whites, having the Drew Holidays, having the Al Horfords, having the role players that play both ends of the floor is what wins you an NBA championship. You got to have superstar talent plus two-way role players. And the Lakers and Suns have the superstar talent. They don't have the two-way role players. And this is taking it back to the Jayson Tatum thing. This is why that kind of conversation is stupid. I think Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Anthony Davis are all better than Jayson Tatum right now. I think they all are. But especially with Jayson Tatum in this miserable shooting slump, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because their team has these limitations. Tatum's playing alongside good two-way role players. His team's winning a shit ton of games and winning the title. Anthony Davis and LeBron and Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, they're playing alongside one-way role players. Their team is really struggling. Basketball is a team sport at the end of the day. And by the way, when I say LeBron, Anthony Davis, and KD are better than Tatum, I'm mainly talking in a playoff context. I think for 82 games, you still take Tatum over most guys just because of his durability. LeBron turns 40 next year. But the point is like, we did get a healthy LeBron and AD last year, and they still underachieved. And a lot of people are going like, well, if LeBron and AD are that good, why aren't they winning more? And it's like, because it is better to win games to have the Drews and the Derrick Whites and the Al Horfords than it is to have the Rui Hachimuras, the D'Angelo Russells, and the Jared Vanderbilts. It just is. It just is. Like, two-way role players win titles. That is what happens. And so I hope that we can kind of like see past that. As far as the Devin Booker part goes, and I want to take it back to the mailbag for a second. The fascinating thing to me is that those four guys have played well. If you were to rank the top 5 players with Team USA so far, it's going to be LeBron and AD, Booker and KD, and it's probably Bam as the 5th guy. And I think that's really fascinating. AD and Bam, why have they succeeded? They are 2 traditional 5-out bigs. Really good at flowing from side to side, multiple dribble handoffs in the same possession, the ability to be a scoring threat on the roll, while also being able to get up and down the floor and transition and defend in multiple ways. That's obviously why they've worked. Why has Kevin Durant and Devin Booker worked so well? Kevin Durant and Devin Booker have worked so well because they are the quintessential plug-and-play guys. Devin Booker has been asked to be Klay Thompson on this team, to guard on the perimeter, to chase over the top of screens, and to operate with an advantage created by other stars. He's done a masterful job of that. And then Kevin Durant, the exact same thing, obviously from the forward position. He's benefiting from the attention other guys are getting, knocking down a ton of these perimeter jump shots, which are so valuable in FIBA with the defensive 3-second rule. And just one of the big reasons why Book and KD in particular have played so well is quick decision-making. They are just guys that catch and quickly read the floor, make a read, keep it moving. That is really easy to play alongside. When you go play pickup, and you're playing with a guy that you know what he's going to do, it's easy. Because when you throw him that pass, if you know he's going to shoot when he's open or he's going to drive when he's guarded and he's going to always make the right play out of it, it's easy to play. When you throw it to the guy who catches and holds and jab steps and you don't know if he's going to shoot or if he's going to randomly decide to ISO or if he's going to randomly decide to do something else, it's frustrating and difficult to play with. The flip side of that coin, why has a guy like Joel Embiid really struggled in this setting? Because he's going to struggle to play 5-out basketball, flowing from side to side, getting up and down the floor, playing alongside other stars, quick decision-making. I find that fascinating. And what Devin Booker and Kevin Durant are telling you is they are professional basketball players, meaning they can play many different styles of basketball. It's like a session guitarist who plays blues for one guy, a little bit of classic rock for another guy, country lines for another guy. He's a professional. His job is, what does the band need? The band needs me to do this. I'll do that, right? That's what KD and Devin Booker are doing. They are slotting in two roles on this team because they are professional basketball players. Whereas a guy like Joel Embiid, force of nature, and by literal definition, a professional basketball player, but he needs to play a certain style. And if I ask Embiid to do something that's a little out of his comfort zone, he's going to struggle. And I find that to be fascinating. And again, and I said this on the radio this morning, that to me is what's so fascinating about basketball. It's more art than science. You don't just add talent and get talent benefit. You add talent and you get what's complementary out of it. And Devin Booker and Kevin Durant have incredibly complementary play styles that can fit alongside other good basketball players. For the mailbag, why does the media hate Bam? I don't think the media hates Bam. I think there's a certain limitation there offensively that has been baked in for a long time. And the three-point shooting is exciting, right? And that is something that kind of changes the equation with Bam, right? Everyone's always been a huge fan of Bam on the defensive end of the floor. Obviously, everything he's capable of there, probably the best switching big in the league, if not one of the best switching bigs in the league. He's a guy that is a really good passer on the short roll, a guy who's been a really good dribble handoff guy in 5-out offense. But there have been some limitations for him offensively in his career. Namely, last year, guys, for Miami, last season, Bam shot below 50% on layups. That was a huge issue in the finals 2 years ago against Denver. His ability to make those short shots right by the basket. And so the reality is Bam, as good as he is, there's still just a little bit of an offensive limitation there that prevents him from getting to the next level, right? But I still think Bam is incredibly valuable. I think he's underrated. I think he's showing what he can do at this level. And here's the thing, if he's going to struggle to make layups, his ability to knock down three-point shots would be an excellent counter to that. But I think hate is the wrong word. Bam flies under the radar because he has offensive limitations. That's really all it is. But anybody who watches Bam and understands the game knows that he brings so much good to the table. And if he can mitigate some of his issues around the basket by knocking down three-point shots, that goes a long way to increasing his value. And he shot the ball really damn well in these FIBA games. And one of the specific things that I've also liked, I'm pulling up Bam's jump shot numbers so I can show you guys real quick. But one of the other things that I've appreciated with Bam too is you're getting a good look at what it's like when he plays alongside another big, when he's been with Anthony Davis. And that's fascinating because one of the things we talk about is when you have to use your big to defend ball screens, it gets a little bit tougher for your smaller players on the back line to make the low man rotations, right? So that's the guy that has to step over on the ball screen to deflect lobs when Bam is up at the level, and then the guy gets back to the shooter when the ball gets worked to the opposite side, right? Well, if you have another big in the equation, there's more opportunities for Bam to actually be in that situation. And we've seen more of that with Anthony Davis. And so I think it'd be really cool just to get more opportunity to see Bam in that type of role. Bam has taken 12 catch and shoot jump shots so far with Team USA and has got 15 points out of them. That's 1.25 points per shot. That's really, really quality shooting from Bam Adebayo. All right, we have 5 more questions. The Warriors acquired Melton and Anderson. Both were on the Grizzlies in 2022. The Warriors won a chip, but had the toughest and most intense series against Memphis. Memphis challenged because they knew Warrior basketball, hence the signings. Clever move. I like them because they fit kind of traditional Golden State Warrior roles. D'Anthony Melton is, in my opinion, like a poor man's version of KCP, but he's a better ball handler than KCP. KCP is more of a movement shooter type of archetype. Melton's got a little bit more off the dribble bounce. Like pop to be able to make plays on his own on the bounce. Kyle Anderson fits the other half of that Golden State Warriors mold. The Golden State 5-out mold typically kind of feeds around 2 fulcrums and then 3 decision makers, right? So whether that's Draymond and Andrew Bogut back in the day, or it's Draymond and Looney a couple years ago, or if it's Draymond and Kuminga now, they have these 2 guys that function primarily as the guys that are throwing the dribble handoffs while the other 3 guys are running action around them. And so you need 3 guys that can run action that can all dribble and pass and make quick decisions. And then you need the guys that can set those screens, roll into space, flow into the next dribble handoff, all that classic stuff for the Warrior offense. Kyle Anderson, to me, fits wonderfully into one of those fulcrum spots. He's a guy who's really good at operating with an advantage on the catch, in that short area where he can make those little floaters and stuff like 10 feet from the rim. He can make passes out of there, set good screens, while also being a very, very good defensive player on the other end of the floor. And then D'Anthony Melton, because of his ability to put the ball on the floor, gives you another guy who can run action while also defending on the other end of the floor. You added 2 two-way guys that pretty seamlessly fit into the Golden State Warrior offense. I thought they were really nice additions. Can you briefly discuss how elite Derrick White is at basketball? Where does he rank in the NBA on the impact value scale? So I don't have any real impact list for Derrick White, but I do want to talk about his impact for a minute because I talked a lot about Derrick White when I went on with Ethan Strauss about a week ago, and we were discussing just kind of like what makes a winning basketball player, and we were discussing some Team USA stuff. And one of the things that I find really fascinating about Derrick White, because Derrick White made another game-saving play the other day, and he's made plenty of them in his life, right? He famously last year in the Eastern Conference Finals gave the Celtics a chance to win in Game 7 by stealing Game 6 in Miami with that offensive rebound putback, right? And against South Sudan, not in the Olympics, but in the exhibition, on the final possession, there's a play where Carlick Jones is working against Drew Holiday, makes a really nice right to left move and kind of like ditches Drew and goes into a floater. Anthony Davis has no choice but to abandon his man and step up and try to block it, which forces Carlick to shoot a really high floater, which goes way over the backside of the rim. And Anthony Edwards does not peel off of his man and box Anthony Davis's man out. Anthony Edwards makes a mistake. This becomes something that could be an issue. Wenyen Gabriel goes up, gets 2 hands on the basketball, and is right there to tip dunk it in. Derrick White comes flying in from out of the play, barely gets a piece of it, and causes Wenyen Gabriel to throw it into the front of the rim, and Team USA wins. And it's an example of what makes Derrick White such an elite role player. The motor never stops. And I was talking about this with Ethan because the Anthony Edwards corollary on that same possession, as he doesn't make that extra play, is stars are always in the energy conservation business. They're trying to make sure they got the legs they need to make plays down the line. Role players are always in the energy expending business. They know that their role is to constantly point and shoot their effort in all of these areas, knowing there's another guy that can step in and do their job when they're tired and vice versa. And their job is to never leave any of that meat on the bone. And that's what makes Derrick White the quintessential role player. He's got the tools. He's athletic. He's got long arms. He's a useful offensive player, very quick, accurate three-point shot release, makes quick reads, can play driving kick, can offensive rebound, but most importantly, he directs his 6'6" long-armed frame into just constant effort and energy on the details. Active as a rebounder, one of the best shot blocking guards in the league, a guy that fights over the top of screens consistently. That is what makes a good role player. It's having athletic gifts, but also being relentless in your attention to detail, in your effort and energy on every single possession, which is something that you can't expect out of stars. And that's what makes a really good role player. All right, 3 more. Hi, Jason, big fan. I really enjoy listening to you talk about the game. The situation with Jayson Tatum's jump shot got me thinking. How do players get into these slumps where the mechanics are all out of whack? I imagine these guys are shooting hundreds of shots a day. It's surprising that they all of a sudden lose rhythm and mechanics. So usually when you go work on your shot, you are working on some sort of mechanic thing, right? A huge one for me is footwork. I rep footwork every single day because that's the part of my shot that I choose to focus on. But even with my release, like I have a specific thing that happens to me every once in a while where like every once in a while my hand will drift a little bit in front of my face instead of getting my elbow tucked. It's just something that happens when I play for months and months. Like there'll be a stretch where just my form gets a little out of whack and I got to take time to go into the gym and like make sure I'm getting that elbow tucked so that I'm getting a good straight release every single time, right? Like everybody works on those little details. I've listened to Kyrie Irving talk about how he goes into the gym and works on his form. Steph Curry does form shooting for several minutes before he even gets into his shooting drill. So he'll just shoot little 5-foot jumpers until his form feels right. Like when you go work on your shot, you work on your form. And I think in a lot of cases, when you enter into a bad slump, it can cause you to over-tinker with it. And it's very clear that, because here's the thing, when you like, just take that example I talked about with getting your elbow underneath. So like if you're like really hyper-focused on getting that elbow in, you might start to exaggerate it and like add a little hitch into your shot. And you never want to do that because you want to have good energy transfer. You want to have good flow from the bottom of your shot to the top of your shot. And so in all likelihood, my guess is that Jayson just wasn't shooting well and it started to get to him mentally a little bit. And so he started to tinker with it. And now he's over tinkering with it. And now he's got some issues. This is what happened to Anthony Davis. Like his release on his jump shot is way slower now than it was in the bubble. But he's probably tinkering with it a lot more because he just hasn't shot well in a long time. And so Tatum just needs to get out of this Olympic setting and he needs to get in the gym all damn summer and polish that shit up and make sure it's ready for training camp. 2 more. Jason, if the Lakers got Jeremy Grant in a trade and couldn't get an athletic guard at the 2, who would be the 5th starter at the 2 for you? Max Christie? Since you said for Max to start, you needed an awesome wing at the 3, or Jared Vanderbilt to increase the length and size of the team, which would most likely be a switching group. I think that we are going to see Max Christie do some starting this year, especially if they end up trading D'Angelo Russell. The thing with Max Christie that makes it really hard for me is I just haven't seen him play a substantial NBA role for a large sample size. There's a lot of stuff I'm really excited about. He's a very good athlete. I was actually watching some random footage of the Laker-Warrior game earlier this year. It was the one that went to double overtime, and LeBron had like 36, 20, and 12. It was like one of his crazy games this season, and he hit all those pull-up jump shots in overtime to win the game. But in that game, there was a play where like Max Christie set a quick pick on LeBron and then slipped into open space, and LeBron like hit him with a perfect bounce pass. And Max like caught in traffic and like elevated off of 2 feet and dunked on Draymond Green. And I was like, man, like Max has like such great natural athletic gifts. Excellent frame, excellent foot speed, competes at the point of attack, navigates screens well, active with his hands, absorbs contact. He's put on muscle, shoots the ball really well. My main concern with him is driving and kicking. Like, how good is he at just like making decisions when he has to put the ball on the floor? But again, like, I just got to see it. And I need to see a lot of it. And I hope that he gets a substantial role all season so that we just get a lot of time to see what Max Christie has. But bottom line, NBA history tells us young players struggle to contribute in the later rounds of the playoffs. And so if you're counting on Max to be your starting 2, I think you'd have to be really good at the other 4 spots. And it's a lot to ask with where the Lakers are at this point. And so we'll see. Like even Jeremy Grant, I like Jeremy Grant. The thing that I like about Jeremy Grant is just the athletic waves. Jeremy is big and freaky athletic, and if you put him next to LeBron and AD, that's just a lot of size and athleticism. But Jeremy hasn't defended super well since he left Denver. He's notoriously a guy that cares more about just making his money and playing chill basketball somewhere than playing a hard job for a winning team. That was kind of the story on him when he went to Detroit. And so like I don't know that I don't know what Jeremy Grant we get. Like if we get the Jeremy Grant from the bubble who was really competing and guarding the other team's best player, like that's interesting to me. But I'm curious to see if that's what we get, if that deal ends up getting done. And obviously there's no guarantee that deal ends up getting done. And so we'll see. Like the Lakers are in a tough spot. I mean, here's the thing. There's been a lot of talk about Gabe Vincent, Max Christie, and Jared Vanderbilt just kind of being the defense and athleticism that joins the team by Max actually getting playing time without Darvin Ham in the picture and by Jared Vanderbilt and Gabe Vincent being healthy. I'm okay with the approach that you wait till the deadline at this point because you already missed out on DeJounte Murray, and it looks like you weren't getting DeJounte Murray unless you included Austin Reeves, which is a difficult decision to make, right? Outside of that, I haven't seen, like Donovan Mitchell was not a realistic target, so there's not really a great option out there right now. And so while I would like them to upgrade the role player spots, I'm okay with you at least taking it into camp and seeing what Max can do, seeing what Jared Vanderbilt looks like from a health standpoint, seeing how Gabe Vincent looks. But come hell or high water, if it doesn't look right, you got to make a move at some point because LeBron and AD are too good and you owe these guys a legitimate final chance. And I think you owe them the use of those 2 first-round draft picks to try to make that happen. All right, last one. Hi, Jason. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the future of centers in relation to the new CBA and cap management. Obviously, the tier 1 guys, Jokic, Embiid, and AD, deserve the max, and I'd assume if you didn't have one of those 3 guys, you'd want a basic rim protector or runner like a Lively, Jalen Duren, etc. Or a genuine stretch 5 if you were lucky like Miles Turner or Kristaps Porzingis. The issue arises if you're someone like Sabonis or Bam, who are clearly more skilled than average centers but aren't close to the tier 1 guys. And when they are on max deals, both the ceiling for Miami and Sacramento are limited. If you were a GM looking for a center, would you just want them to simply rebound / protect the rim / catch lobs or try to find the next tier 1 center? Having that genuine tier 1 center gives you a true advantage come playoff time, but the numbers suggest that this is way harder to find compared to a tier 1 wing or guard. Thanks as always for your content. Looking forward to disagreeing with your player rankings. So this got really fascinating for me after the Jared Allen deal because if you look at it, Jared Allen is probably a slightly above average starting center in the NBA. And he got over $30 million a year on his extension. Isaiah Hartenstein is an average starting center in this league, $27 million a year. Nick Claxton, average starting center in this league, $25 million a year. And that's not even close to the top tier guys that you mentioned, where you're getting into Jokic, Embiid, Anthony Davis, Bam Adebayo, you mentioned Sabonis. Like, there's so many of these guys too. Like, what about Zubac? What about Chet Holmgren? Like we can go on and on. There are so many of these like quality centers, and if the running rate on them is $25 million a year at a minimum, a couple of things are interesting there. First of all, it's fascinating that the league is telling us that center position is so damn valuable now, which is telling you what the problem that Jokic and Embiid and Anthony Davis and all these guys present. You got to have interior size. The second thing that's fascinating about it is, okay, what do you do if you're a GM then? And this is where I look at like, who is it that Jalen Smith went to? Let me check real quick. But Jalen Smith, I saw, went for like $9 million a year. That Bulls. He went to the Bulls. So like, that's where it gets difficult. Like, would you be better off paying $9 million a year for a guy like a Jalen Smith, or $30 million a year or $27 million a year for a guy like Isaiah Hartenstein? And those are tough decisions to make. And that's where it comes down to what the rest of your roster looks like, right? So if you're a team that doesn't have the ability from the standpoint of the cap to go after a higher level center, then you got to look at that lower tier, right? And it's just all about resource management. And so from there, I think it just depends on what your predicament is. Cleveland had to re-sign Jared Allen. Evan Mobley's not big enough to play center. They had to appease Donovan Mitchell. They're in a little bit of a win now type of predicament, right? The Thunder, that's an interesting example. Spending $27 million a year on a center when you already have Chet Holmgren on the roster. But they lined it up so that Isaiah Hartenstein's option is at the same time as Chet Holmgren's deal. So they can at least address that when they get into the future. And my guess is that when they max Chet, they probably won't retain Isaiah Hartenstein at that point. They probably will go after a bigger forward, right? And so it's all about resource management. But the thing that's been fascinating to me is, just to put it simply, the centers in the league just cost a lot of money now. And I don't think there's such, like, if you want an average starting center, you're paying $25 million a year. And that's just a lot. That's a lot to deal with the cap. Now, the one flip side there is when the new TV deal kicks in, $25 million is kind of like the new $15 million. You know what I mean? And so again, like, it might be one of those deals where when we get into the future, the teams that got in, guys, the teams that locked up Claxton and Jared Allen and all these guys in that 25 to 30 million range, they might be really happy a couple years from now on the new CBA, or sorry, not the new CBA, the new TV deal, because that might be the new discount. A starting center might go for $35 million a year in a few years. And so again, we're in a little bit of a transition period, but I do think it's really fascinating how much the league is valuing those guys.